One second before you go live, how do you change the name on the screen so I can just switch that over to Headless? Rename. I see it. All right.
going on down here to interviews, and let me turn that off and turn this on. And oops, 1 second. I gotta go to the Zoom. This one. That's the one. Boom. All right. There we are. We are on the air. We are on camera. We're live. We should be. Let me make sure. I don't see anyone in the chat room yet. I figured at least your fans would show up.
I don't have a lot. They're not
Here
very
we are on.
motivated.
All right. That's all good. That's all good. All right. So it is Zerleth Immortal, and I'm having another killer conversation, pseudo interview with Headless Giant, and we're going to talk about basically Project Bluebeam in the context specifically of Cliff High's spiders, his special algorithm that picks up basically the it's basically he's picking up the trends in the psychic field of cyberspace in particular, right? And so what's brought us here is this algorithm interpretation of this event that is going to happen after a specific amount of days after the Joe Rogan interview of Donald Trump.
Right. So I can fill you in a little bit. 2012, he was in a place where he was just getting started doing podcasting, and there's an audio version of him talking about how there's going to be an event 39 days after Joe Rogan interviews Donald Trump on his podcast. Now, podcasting was pretty new back then. So the idea that this guy, Joe Rogan, who just got done on Fear Factor, right? He wasn't the superstar that we know of him today. Just got started doing this stupid little podcast in his basement, talking with his friends. And somehow this event where Donald Trump, he was the guy from The Apprentice, pretty big star. Everybody knew about Donald Trump back then. Nobody could have possibly imagined what has happened since that date to today. I mean, if you think about all of the events that transpired to make them two of the most central characters in history, and then having that be this trigger event for a war between UFOs, over our heads. So that's like this conflagration of emotional energy produced this prediction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, you can look at that election cycle, all of 2024, it was just so charged with emotional energy. Somebody's taking advantage of the fact that everything is on high alert right now. Everybody is in a state of panic, sort of, and they don't know where to turn because nothing's, hit the wall yet. We haven't seen the big event that's going to take us from where we are now into some sort of different future.
Yeah. I'm gonna find it very interesting. If they try and do this, I think that you're gonna see a much larger healthy reaction to the ratio of unhealthy reaction. I feel like the way we've gone through so many things, and I think the way we've been a Hollywood illusion culture that has been kind of going through a purge in the psychic field of our relationship with the media and celebrity as a concept, and at the very least, completely redefining what a celebrity is. Looking
Right.
at who is capable of maintaining attention in this sphere, right? And listen, I'll say this. I'll say fucking this much. Joe Rogan, I do not like him. I hate what he misses. It's
Right.
painful. It's the same reason why I hate Ancient Aliens. I hate what they miss. It's fucking deliberate. It's terrible. He's a big fat toe who's a fucking Chinaman's limp fucking tall Owen fucking Benjamin. Fucking shout out.
Yeah, dude. I think that the idea of Joe Rogan is very different from the actual character because, he's a fence rider, big time. So like he was anti moon conspiracy, and then he was pro moon conspiracy. He was anti moon conspiracy, and then he goes back to being, well, maybe we did fake the moon landing. Like there's something weird about a person who can't make up their mind on something that central. It's like, come on, man, what is it? Like if the evidence hasn't changed from one period to the next, what keeps taking
It's
you
peer
back and forth?
pressure. It's peer
Right?
pressure.
You
He's
can see
hearing
how it
two
works
different
with the guests on
groups.
his show.
Right. He's hearing two different groups of people, and he's just like, which audience do I want to hold at this period of time? And so he's not thinking about the future in a way of integrity. He's thinking about the future in a way of self-preservation, and he thought about his social credit score, which is quintessential to be successful on the internet, because if he tries to be successful on television, he doesn't get to see any raw data, right? He doesn't get to see the exact numbers of true interest in what he's doing to help gauge, whatever conversation at his intelligence level he's going to have. And it's his intelligence level. It's just like, oh, man, it's just like, are you acting stupid? Everybody says George Bush was acting stupid. And it's just like, I don't know, puppets, masterminds, in-betweeners. It doesn't really matter what fucking intelligence level we're perceiving by their fucking behavior. It's the intelligence of whatever is controlling the situation, and this is why Trump plays 5D chess. It's because the presidential process is 5D chess, and they're just letting Trump play the fool card and expose the emperor's no clothes.
Well, I think it's much more simple than that. I think they looked at Trump as a guy. This is what Kissinger said about him. He said, a guy with no principles is a really interesting character to have as president. And, he's controlled the whole, you know, foreign policy establishment for like 60 years. And so
Mm-hmm.
for Kissinger to give him the okay because he has no principles, that really says something about what they think they can get him to do. You know what I mean?
Right. And I don't know, if he has no principles, one thing that he does kind of do good at, in the most absolute general sense, because of what was foundational when, before the election, you're a conspiracy theorist looking for somebody who would dare say what needed to be said, and he became the man who chose to dare to say what needed to be said, right? And in 2016, my level of consciousness found that top notch, respectable, and that was something that was a very different idea I had about things than any other election I had before. Every other election I had the same idea about things, right? Despite me like saying like, I guess maybe this guy, right? With this one, it was just like, I don't know. I don't know, but he's one of these two fuckers are getting in there one way or the other. I guess I'm going to try and bend the needle if it matters. And so, I
I
went
think
with
I can
going on.
fill in some blanks on that because
Yeah,
I think of Trump as being like the ultimate sales guy, right? And a sales guy never talks about what he doesn't understand because the only way you can keep people's attention and keep them focused on you and keep all of the attention in such a way that you can, actually make the sale or the pitch
hmm,
is to only focus on that stuff. So it makes you very, um, I guess, insecure about your own intelligence. So when somebody can come along and pretend like they would know more than the rest of the people or anything like that, has some sort of secret knowledge or secret intelligence, he's going to start to gravitate towards them because
yeah,
not knowing what they know kind of makes him feel insecure. Now,
yeah,
they're not telling him anything good. That's one of
yeah,
the things about Kissinger is like Kissinger is talking with this guy like he's a child because he can. You know, being good at being a sales guy doesn't necessarily make you a high quality intelligence when it comes to figuring this kind of stuff out. And let's face it, Trump doesn't read. I mean, that's one of the things you can really tell about the guy. He just does not read. Whatever the headlines are on TV, he's going with that.
yeah. I guess so. I think that there's a certain context to it all. because like there are guys that are part of bloodlines that it's just like if the state's going to exist and it's this nasty animal and somebody's got to be the lead of it, it's just like not inherently a bad person, but is just trying to get a bad job done that everybody's asking him to do, right? Which is to break all these fucking promises because we don't understand civics and why we forgot to persuade our Congress better or, take care of clearing that house, right? So the military industrial complex is collecting this kind of intelligence data of how we fucking behave, which is why that Joe Rogan thing would have triggered the algorithm as such for their interests with this over 4-year period of time they've had to perfect the Space Force in his absence, um, which I'm sure will be quite something considering that it just went through 4 years of administration by the Democrats afterwards, under different congressional kind of body, right? And all of
That
this,
brings us right back to the central focus that we're talking about, because the Space Force is so much more complex than anybody gives it credit for. All you need to do is start to look through a couple of their documents and you realize they're not a joke. They're talking about setting up huge laser grids across the planet using bases in Central America, which is right along with what we've been saying now about this Operation BlueBeam shit. They have this stuff on an operational level that can actually carry out something
yeah,
like Cliff High's prediction.
they can do multiple things and combine them together, right? Um, so the date for this is December 3rd is the trigger date according to the algorithm, right? So
Absolutely.
they've been seeding for a certain period of time all this stuff through these Pentagon hearings, which whatever happens, this Congress is going to have whatever their fucking inner psyche is going to be where it's at, right?
Right.
Um,
We're
you
already
know,
seeing the lead up to this drama, though.
yeah,
I mean,
they're
they've
gonna,
been talking about
yeah, and,
these crafts since
yeah.
2017.
So what we're looking at is the primary influence. If this gets pulled off, the primary psychic influence is going to come from how they're going to roll the dice on people, on how people have reacted and would trust certain circumstances about alien invasion stuff from years and years and years of that conversation with Joe Rogan, the back and forth between the dick jokes and the farting and all the hard liquor, right? And then some smart guy coming in and giving them something to navel gaze about without ever acting like a man and deciding that they know something about something.
Well, all I could say,
Never using anything in the trivium process for proper knowledge and wisdom to come to any conclusions in any of their conversations in any of their fucking episodes. And then we're all supposed to feel really good just because Eddie Bravo is brave enough to smoke pot and talk about the flat earth. Shout out Eddie Bravo. Is it Eddie Bravo who talks about the flat earth? Shout out
it
Bravo.
is.
He has better conversations off of Rogan, right? And I'm going to cut the man some slack because life is awesome and I can't be that mad at anybody, right?
All I could say is that it will be an epic season finale to this season of America. Because let's face it, this whole past couple of years since 2017 has seemed like a fucking TV show. Like I'm not alone in thinking about that. It's just bizarre. Look at this last assassination. My God, what are we living through? This takes us back to
Yeah,
simulation theory
this
if
is
you really want
why
to get into it.
this is something that really amuses me in the psyop when I like have to go back and forth between different post pandemic Marvel movies, right? You
Right.
know, like before the pandemic, every Marvel movie was a goddamn fucking perfect gem in my eyes. To be fucking honest with you, I had very few complaints. Like the Thor movies were like my biggest complaints because I knew they were selling him short because those motherfuckers didn't want to fucking activate all the fucking Germanic alpha males with proper cosmology as such, especially understanding him in that fucking Zeusian archetype, right?
There's
They
some really good Nordic movies about Thor and like the relationship to the giants, and they're really like top notch special effects and everything, dude.
right, right.
Like those are the shits that you need to be watching if you want to see some modern interpretations. Because
Yeah,
I'm telling you, that Germanic religion is just so powerful.
yeah.
It
So
has so much.
let's actually talk for a second about top-notch special effects.
Yeah,
Because one of the things I wanted to bring up, um, I've got some clips that I need to show you, and so this is just a small segment of a bigger thing. And what I need to do, you may need to watch this on the YouTube because I'm going to see if I can share the screen properly. Because I can share the screen with you, but then does that image transfer to the OBS? So the image doesn't transfer to the OBS. So give me 1 second because I got to move. I got to grab. Uh, I gotta add it into the OBS. 1 second. Screen capture? No, no. I need window capture. Where is it? Window capture. Thank you. Add source. Hang on a second. This is exciting live stuff you're watching right here. Okay. Capture one. Almost
have
there.
you experimented with the hotkeys on OBS?
Um, yeah, I really should do that. Um, you know,
Dude,
you,
if
you
you've
would
got a
think you would
list,
think an Aries would have taken 3 seconds to learn how to do things faster, but I didn't.
here's the thing. I've watched a bunch of OBS tutorial videos, but I have a Apple laptop, so I can't use it.
Mm,
And so now I know all this stuff about OBS, but I can't use it.
gotcha.
It's like, well,
Okay.
maybe. No, but if you've got a list right next to your computer with all your hotkeys on it that you would
Yeah.
normally use,
Yeah.
you can just zip through this thing like it's nothing.
Oh, I get it. I get it. I know. I know. I I like the analog universe, man. Anyway, touchable holograms. This is where we're at, right? So this is a 7D hologram. They're going to explain how it works right here. Headless, make sure you can hear this.
Touchable holograms.
Yep, I hear
Okay,
it.
good, good. All right. 1 second, let me make sure that audio is going out on the server properly.
When we talk about holograms, the basic understanding that we have is that you can see them, but you cannot touch them. But that's not always true, surprisingly. By using tactile technology, technology which creates haptic feedback, researchers at the University of Bristol's Department of Computer Science managed to create a 3D shape in midair that can be not only touched, but actually felt by the human hand. Although gamers will immediately think how much games can improve using this technology, entertainment is not the only industry that can be benefited from such a discovery in the future. Just imagine doctors looking at a 3D projection of a tumor before an operation, or actually being able to touch artifacts that are located in museums. The possibilities are endless, and all of them useful. Number 7. Inform.
I think your mic is muted.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, yeah, there's a bunch of neat things that are on this, and like the Inform is also really cool because that's got a whole direct tactile transmission system in it, and uh, so there's another video a little bit later that I am going to be interested uh, in um, in sharing when we get a little bit more into the alien invasion specifics because the holograms is one thing, but I've also got a video to show you a little bit of the real deal because I've seen them myself from just years of, oh, I don't know, looking up and not just taking the clouds for granted. It's the clouds, and it's certain kinds of clouds. And we'll talk about that. It's something I've done. I've been talking about it since 2012. Old YouTube channel. But anyway,
Well, can I talk about a theory I have real quick about holographics?
we are theorizing tonight.
So there is the idea that maybe electrons and photons are much more similar than we give them credit for. And what if these electrons that, basically appear in a cloud around our, atoms represent a type of hologram, a holographic projection, right? Because let's say that they are the same as photons. And these two things are, interacting on a subatomic level to create the reality. So are we not tactile holograms anyway?
We are a sound light frequency that
Holograms.
utilizes the sentient plasma in the ether to
Right.
manifest in existence here in the center point of all the realms.
Right. So essentially, what they're trying to do is with holography, what would be the difference if you would just start simulating these electrons in tighter and tighter clouds? Like you could just make food out of literally light. Like let's take the holodeck for an example. It's a hard light projection. So let's say you only eat food from the holodeck,
Mm.
right? And if you're only eating food from the holodeck, you can live in the holodeck for as long as you live, right?
Right, right.
And you would never really know the difference between you and the rest of the holograms because
Mm.
let's say you're born in there. So how much different is that than the world that we live in? If you think about it, like we might just be a hard light projection.
Right, right. We talk about the MCU movies. In the second Thor movie, The Dark World, they got the Soul Forge, and one of the things I liked that they were trying to fucking do for soft disclosure in that movie was the chick character who eventually comes back as the chick Thor in the fourth film that I refuse to watch. Um, but yeah, she's having this very brilliant conversation with with Odin and and uh, and Laufey. I think Loki's mother is Odin's wife in the thing or whatever. Anyway, they got the Soul Forge, and I forget what she calls it, but that she has a quantum physicist's name for what the Soul Forge is, right? And so this is like the spirit science stuff that then gets properly fleshed out by Doctor Strange, right? Now, by the way, this mythos is going to be in the mix of critical ideas that will get triggered in the psyche of the public for anybody that has stayed in the infantile state with Disney, with the Disney psychonic episodes, right? All these Karen princesses that were created by them, right? So they're going to have different personal reactions as programmed to these elements of a Disneyverse becoming real, as we've seen so many movies play out in 2020 in particular. I could have said, yeah, I remember that from that dystopian film. Yeah, that happened in that post-apocalyptic film. Oh, I remember this movie in that horror movie that I watched, right? Like, every fucking scenario
Here's
I
one.
ever seen happened in
Think about V for
2020.
Vendetta.
And of course, V for Vendetta, right? I've got my Guy Fawkes mask lying around here somewhere. It's over there, hanging out with Captain America. I'm not going to take it down
Well,
right
think
now.
about that disclosure though. Like you remember all the marches using anonymous mask and all the rest of this stuff back in the early 2010s. And then
Yeah, yeah.
afterwards, because the movie came out in 2005, and then immediately after all that Anon stuff sort of turned into Pentagonimous, now they've got this Pentagon virus that is exactly talked about in that movie. So you've got, you know, COVID, which is lab created and used to radicalize the population into war.
Right.
You know, you're seeing the same thing mirrored in reality, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, that movie was
Yeah. I mean,
it was
I
kind of sentient.
look. If people that have known me from before the pandemic, I absolutely had like my V moment. Not because anything happened to me, but I was forced to be restricted in living my life while I was watching it happen to everyone else, and that
Right.
kind of put an inner like voice of a V. It's saying like Steve, we're changing course now, buddy. This is the gloves are off, and you're gonna have to live the reality of all the conspiracies that you figured out 10 years ago, right? And that's
Right.
what. And so, you know, as far as I'm fucking concerned, fuck you, deep state. You have this coming.
Now, here's an interesting question. Have you ever seen the movie The Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis? Way back in the day.
Um,
Also had Samuel
I've
L.
heard
Jackson in it.
I've heard of it. I don't remember if I ever saw it. I know a lot of people loved it.
Right. So that movie has right smack dab near the end. The main bad guy is explaining how they're going to blow up this infrastructure to stimulate the Pentagon's budget, right? Because they want to continue with these wars in the Middle East. And the only way to do that is to blow up a building in America. And so in this movie, he's explaining how in 1993, the World Trade Center was bombed by people who were trained by the FBI. Like they brought that up right there in that movie, and this was a 1995 movie. And so it's almost like, you know, if you've been exposed to these things, have you ever seen the movie Enemy of the State?
Oh, of
The
course.
bad the bad guy in that movie was born on 9/11, 1944, and they flashed that up on the screen. And this movie was made in 1999. So there's so much forewarning that almost goes into what the
Yeah.
conspiracy culture is today
Uh huh.
from the mainstream, sort of like guiding people into that role. So I
Yeah.
can't help but
Yeah.
think maybe it is kind of a controlled perspective that we're given, that we're supposed to think about things in that sort of way, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Exactly. Look. There are many levels of important things that come with uh, the discussion of what happened to Tom Althouse in Hollywood, right? And if you listen to any of his interviews, including mine that I did with some of my people in my other networks, um, we talked about all manner of fucked up things, including how they were gaslighting him in the Matrix films with his personal information being
right.
spread across in cryptic writing, drawing enough context, and this on top of how they changed that film and everything else because that movie was not supposed to look anything like that. They completely changed the world that the film was set in, which was a much more realistic technological horror story.
Well, I think it's funny when it comes to themes in movies, you used to have a theme of government surveillance, right? And that all sort of went away in 2018. Like we haven't had another big government surveillance movie since the start of the Trump presidency, pretty much. Like we're all supposed to forget about all of the stuff like Enemy of the State, where they were talking about this total surveillance grid, which we have now. I mean, that movie perfectly predicted exactly the reality we're living under the NSA.
Right,
You know,
right. But also, they there's not really there isn't a public kind of trigger pull on that, right? You know, um, like there's not like they only use that when they want to like quietly handle somebody. They make them a targeted individual, and then hell will crash down like on them for that, right? You know, it's just like with all likelihood, um, there's forces from the deep state that are trying to kill my friend Sean David Morton with cancer for writing the book Sands of Time, which is another book that was a disclosure on a whole bunch of the reverse engineered shit hiding in all the fucking famous places that were notorious in the Art Bell years, like S4, right? And where some of the real tech is involved. If you got anything more you want to say as a follow-up to that, we can move, and I can show you some of the clip here, which actually we can talk while I show you this, because the visual component or the audio component is not, like, I'll turn it up if Sean says anything that, well, yeah, Sean says some stuff in this, but we can talk over it. It's slow. It's mostly for visual. This is a 12-year-old video, okay? This has been 12 years, and I never looked at my skies the same way again after I watched. This is part 4. There are 3 episodes leading up to where he starts showing you what the craft fully looks like.
Well, just to throw in a little bit on that. So we're all talking about the skies now. We're talking about projections. We're talking about holograms. And you have to bring up the ancient sky gods. I think this perfectly meshes in with that angle as well. You've got so much energy and passion from the ancient peoples talking about the sky. And that's almost completely missing in everyday life. Like, they used to venerate the sky and the sun, and it was a daily worship for, thousands of years. And then all of a sudden you've got this 2,000-year gap where everybody sort of forgets about the sky gods and everything coming from that part of, nature. And now the sky gods are coming back in a big way. So I think it's important to remember that there are ancient themes about cataclysm and stuff like that really do have a lot to do with how the sky gods perceive us and how we relate to them.
Right. Okay, so here we go. And I want you to check real quick. Look at this design as he unfolds it, right? This is one of many ships that are cloaked up there. And we'll let him talk a little bit here, too.
The shape. The same shape.
Okay, too fast. He talks a little slow, so I tried 2x speed, but I think 1.5 will be just fine. All right. Quality's 480. This is a long time ago. This wasn't even like an HD standard universe when he made this.
Over and over and over. Defining the back end of the main aircraft was easier than defining the front. Why? The back end has so many 90-degree right angles and overlapping panels that it cannot accommodate for every single lighting situation presented in the atmosphere. It gives its presence away often. The front end revealed itself by studying the hours and hours of footage. I didn't think for a second that the front half would look anything like this. I expected a simple, sharp delta edge. Instead, it's very smooth and rounded. If there is a cockpit, it's relatively small and is located near the very front section. I have a feeling it is an unmanned drone, though, like the smaller craft.
Can you pause
the wingtips.
Yeah.
All right, dude. That is what I saw when I was in Baghdad, dude.
That's that I would call that a dreadnought in when you look at it in the context of a whole fleet and what its function is. That's kind of like their main kind of like, it's like a transport. It attaches other ships to it. It's got a big power cell. That's a huge Tesla coil in the center there. I saw a cloud over Connecticut when I was driving on the highway in the exact shape of that, with those you see the line texture going across, like the clouds were crisscrossing. It was right there. It was right there. It was so much like that's a ship. Like, that's a ship. Like, the clouds are like clouds don't look like that. Clouds don't form in a framework, right?
Dude, I saw it coming into landing in Balad Air Force Base. Okay, so I'm getting out. They have a movie theater on post there because it's been sort of like, Baghdad's kind of version of
Yeah.
the Andrews Air Force Base, right? So it's been an Air Force base for Saddam for a lot longer than it was for the Americans. So it's the perfect air base for the American people. So there's a movie theater on post, and I was going to see, I think it was, uh, I forgot the movie, but anyways, I was coming back from the movie, and I look up, and they've got these big lighting towers that are aimed at the sky, right? And so this lighting tower was kind of in a row down the road, and this thing you could see was blocking out the light every time it would fly over it, and you couldn't see it at all, and it didn't make any noise, and it was coming in for a landing right there, so it was getting lower and lower, and you could see more and more of the detail on it. Like that detail, that's way too much. This thing is like Vanta black, right? So it's blacker than black. It is incredibly dark. And as it's coming in,
Right.
it didn't make a sound at all. And
Yeah.
you mentioned
Well,
the
I'll tell.
power
Well,
cell.
look, I'll tell you what. You see, like he never, like all this stuff. He's never taken a picture of one. He has deduced this from taking hours and hours and hours of high speed, high aperture. Like he's a professional like photographer, filmer, and he lived in the Gulf of Mexico area of Louisiana at the time, and he was originally looking for cloud anomalies to document geoengineering. So he was already a geoengineering conspiracy theorist already, all right? And so he stumbled on this shortly after realizing the patterns in these ill-looking clouds, because there's very ill-looking clouds that are associated with these guys when they're present, right? I don't know, like what they're fucking seeding up there, but you see those clouds. They're very like, they're more like, uh, they're more like textured, like with the way they bulge their little ripples out. There's like more texture that has kind of an, I don't know, it's kind of got almost an ugliness, like a smoggish kind of wispiness to the way the clouds look, right? Because they do all this exhausting. They can pump out a cloud. Um, there's I They use ionic propulsion. That much I am pretty damn sure of, right?
And in still shots and even video at times. The V-shaped support beams that run from 2 points of the rear to a single point in the front have also been documented. Some areas of the back edge are very blocky, and some rectangular pylons have been seen. The two rear vertical stabilizers are thick, meaning their edges are not sharp, at least towards the back. They have much more width than you'd expect on an aircraft. There is a reason for this, which I will explain later. The original plans for the Aurora mentioned a stainless steel outer surface. I have also read about either one side being painted black, or only the front edges and rear edges being painted black. As for the actual color and the normal visual spectrum, I have no idea. A word about the name Aurora. I believe that the name Aurora does not necessarily refer to a certain aircraft alone, although it may. However, I think the term refers to the system of craft and their mission, the design principle, not what's stenciled on the hull. At one point, I thought the main aircraft was the lost F-19, or the X-19, or the cousin of the F-117 or the B-2, while they were in development. The nicknames I gave the smaller craft early started corresponding with names given to actual experimental aircraft many years ago, such as the Dart, the Manta, etc. However, I found it important not to follow the intentional deceptive trail of supposed black projects, their names, the budgets, the smoke and mirrors.
Oh, and by the way, you're looking at the Avengers helicarrier. This is what they fucking are, right? And they're drone motherships, right? That's a whole drone system that'll work inside of a cloud and fucking do what the fuck it's doing in that cloud. And if it's a storm cloud, it'll be able to charge its kinetic batteries infinitum off of the energy in the storm itself. I've witnessed this phenomenon over this very fucking roof with a TR-3B using this tech. I'm a witness.
I don't care if it's called Senior Citizen, the SR-72, The XSR 73,000 are the
And also, I interviewed this guy at least 6 times back in Revolution Radio. I used to know Sean Gautreaux. He knows who I am.
big wedge of cheese.
Yeah,
I
the
just
one
knew
I
what I was
saw
seeing was
was
real.
only about maybe 2 meters wide. It was definitely drone sized, but
Sure,
it was
yeah.
definitely shaped like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They run the gamut of sizes. We've seen this played out. Deep in your psyche, we're looking at what they've been priming since Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is exactly how the aliens show up in every scene that they show up. They come out of
Well,
storm clouds in all
if they're
shapes and sizes with a
if they're
fucking huge mothership they dock with. And they want you to fucking feed your fucking population to them.
if if you've got a cloud of drones, then you can have any shape craft you want. Like they've already got the tech to do that. We've seen it over and over again with all these different light shows from places like China. All they have to do is have a connecting laser grid with the
Yeah.
holographic
Uh-huh.
technology, and then you've got any shape or size or anything you want because it will be that shape and size. The drone cloud will cause it to be that way.
Right,
And I don't,
right. Yeah.
you've seen this or not, but I don't think there's a way that they've actually militarily been able to defeat a drone army. You know, I haven't seen it. Like you've got the EMP, but that knocks everything out. And once you've got drones in some of the most secure places on Earth, you can't knock everything out. You have to think about other ways of defeating it. So
I know. Yeah. But you know
that's
what? I'm
exciting.
pretty sure that they also, because of how psychological warfare works, it's like the nuclear bomb, right? They're going to terrify you by showing you how much they can use it, to what extent they can use it, right? And then maybe we'll have to make a fucking drone arsenal treaty the way we make a nuclear arms treaty, right? The drone arms race. Because what we're going to look at, we would be seeing with those drones when it comes to um, real practical warfare. It'll be like the movie Surrogate with Bruce Willis. If you've never seen that one, that's a little underrated gem about in a very cyberpunky kind of world where everybody has a surrogate android that they remote control while they freaking sit in a pod in their house because they don't want to leave their house for real. They have this uh, this transmitted sensory experience of life through their machine, which can jump off of buildings and take all the drugs that it wants, and it does no harm to you personally, right? And it's kind of like making friends on like Tinder. And you don't know what each other really looks like because your robot doesn't have to look anything like you. So on and so forth. And soldiers have the militarized version of the drone army soldier who goes out there and all he's doing is costing the government money and their possibility of gaining the territory and nobody is getting killed. Right? So it's like it literally turns it into a game where nobody's getting killed, although the land is at stake.
Well, that's conventional drone warfare right now. I mean, we're seeing that play out in Russia, Ukraine. They've got killer drones
But they
that
don't have
are,
they don't have land occupying, like they don't have like if you've got an android version of yourself, like you're a robot that's there doing what a person would do. Like you've got the place as long as you can keep control of that drone and do everything that drone can do with the equipment it has in a base over there, right? That's my point, right? Like they're not doing that. They're hitting each other with drones. They're using drones with their squads, but those human beings that are on the ground, infantrymen, and at the end of the day, the infantrymen are gonna fucking win if they can be fucking resilient. Look at Afghanistan, graveyard of empires, because those fucking infantrymen can fucking live in those mountains for fucking ever.
So there has been a change in terms of tactics in the Ukraine where they've turned from doing conventional attacks to planting minefields. So if you've got an army of drones planting mines for, let's say, 24 hours a day, you're going to have a lot of fucking anti-personnel mines everywhere.
I see.
And if that's the case, that changes the nature of drone warfare in a big way. So it's not just, dropping a bomb. You're now dropping something that's going to stick around for months, if not weeks or years, in places that people frequently travel. That's in some ways that's even more terrifying.
Yeah, that is pretty damn terrifying, and those two can come to agreement like adults anytime they see fit. Good luck to them in their war games.
Right.
I cannot
Well,
care
it's
about
gonna
the
be
individual
our war
names,
games.
but the term weather machine.
Say again?
It's going to be our war games here soon. I mean, they're looking for any excuse to roll this out on the home front.
Yeah, I know. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I'm so glad that I made good decisions for 2 years.
Feist. On the left is what you see in the sky, or what they want you to see. Fluffy white clouds. On the right is actually what is there. A main aircraft hovering or moving slowly with its nose up in the air. At the bottom of the craft, jets emit the cloud-like material, probably strontium, into the air, while the cloud top-shaped rear edge churns the material into billowing cloud formations. I believe that it's the 4 round identical engines on the back that emit this material. However, the stream that comes from the back forms into striations of 8 to 10 lines before it completely billows into a single cloud unit. These devices are literally spraying clouds. The center large fan-shaped turbine serves several purposes. 1, it stabilizes the tilt of the aircraft while in this low-level mission. 2, it also emits the cloud-like material as exhaust that is vented ahead of the aircraft or behind it. 3, this coil turbine is electrically charged. It is the center of electricity and probably gravity for the airframe and its satellite ships. It acts as a magnetic slingshot for the smallest of the craft. The various craft. As mentioned, the smaller craft were fairly easy to find. The jet signatures left in the sky are small, sharp, and repetitive. Scale has always been a difficult thing to decipher. I had nothing to compare them to in the sky until very recently. However, seeing the small craft is something that is not uncommon these days. I see enough to gauge that the size is about 10 feet across. They zip in and out of the clouds at a few miles per hour. I've read that the manta-shaped craft are about 50 feet long. The manta craft are about 1/3 to 1/4 the length of the large host craft, which makes the large one about 200 feet long. Finding the craft in satellite photographs has possibly confirmed this assessment. After having the time to research the possibility of information on these small craft already being available, I realized that, yes, some of the descriptions I've been outlining fall in line with photographs of secret aircraft projects. Therefore, it could take an aviation expert minutes to tell me which was which, but any aviation expert I have contacted seems to be working for another cause. The lineup of ships are as follows. There is the huge blimp pictured at the top right. The largest craft of this system type is the aircraft carrier, the host, the base of the 2-stage system. The next size down is very similar to the larger craft, but not in the shape of the front, but the similarities in the back. It seems to have only 2 of the 4 identical round engines found on the larger craft. However, it does also have the square corner thrusters that the large one has,
And that context was Bob Lazar's when he said Bob was right.
also has a center fan-like engine that shoots up and down, perpendicular to the surface. I would guess that one was designed after the other, just at a different scale. This size craft is found almost always attached to the rear sides when it is docked. Wasn't there mention of an Aurora 1 and 2? Not that the names matter. Though one of the new craft to emerge in video has been what is commonly deemed as the TR-3B. Its regular triangle shape is different from most of the others, in that it does not look like an aircraft from the Batman series. It attaches to the large craft on the underside, near the rear. Then there are the variety of craft about the same size, but come in different shapes, and are probably experimental aircraft from the span of decades. These can not only attach to the large aircraft carrier itself, but also attach to, recharge, and propel from the middle-sized vehicles. It's a chain. The next size up is the launch platform for the next smaller size down. And when they pop off, usually in an arc, they emit the cloud-making material stored within their hulls. Then there are what I term as runners. These are probably the latest technologies, small, compact, and very fast. I've seen several shapes not only with my naked eye, but in many, many videos. It was slowing down the video that revealed these. I initially
Can you
brushed them
pause
off
a
as
second?
All of these shapes are what the tiny little drone UFOs in Close Encounters of the Third Kind look like. And all of them have their cloud wispy variants that he's tracked.
Can I propose an alternative?
Sure.
What if he's actually seeing biological life, right? Like this could be some sort of massive organism, kind of like the jellyfish that you see that are like tens of different organisms coming together as one. You can have some sort of a semi-plasma organism. Like what if that's what we're seeing here? What if these are organic UFOs?
Well, I mean, maybe, right? If they're organic UFOs, then like they don't like move, right? They would be organic in the sense they would have to be more plant kingdom then,
Jellyfish.
or like a perhaps having a jellyfish-esque quality. Now, one of the things I was also going to bring up because the psyop is also going to be a stimulant on um, Jungian projection, right? And as a psychic phenomenon, right? And I have to go and I have to read that, especially considering I've had my little encounters just to get the Jungian angle on it, right? Uh, but um, when I,
I got one of my favorite books.
yeah, okay.
This is called The Fourth Phase of Water. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's by a guy named Gerald Pollack. He demonstrates very provably that there is a fourth state of water called the easy or exclusionary zone water. Easy water has a charge to it. So you could just plunk in two electrodes into one side of the easy and on the other side and actually start to collect a charge.
Mm,
What he found is that this easy zone, which is, maybe like a micron or two thick, has this semi jelly-like substance that is water, right? That forms around any kind of hydrophilic substance. So if we're talking about these clouds and these things as being creatures, like I could see the water basically self-organizing into some kind of a sentient plasmatic life form
mm. Well,
using those charges like you were talking about.
right, yes, the sentient, right, the sentient plasma. The sentient plasma is, it's like I said about us earlier, right? It's just that when you're talking about the whole thing with the molecules, that we are a sound light frequency that then uses the sentient plasma to come into existence, right? So no, there's a possibility of that, right? Um, if it's an organism, right? It,
Maybe
it but
we're
it
being
but it
creative.
it might just simply be an egregore, like a collective egregore, because of the whole purpose of the psychic projection process and what the military is doing with what they know about psychic abilities. The CIA disclosed that document of the scientific proof of these various systems for remote viewing and working with zero point energy and all these
Here's an
different things.
idea. Here's an idea. What if all of these chemtrails are a form of geoengineering for the sky gods?
Um, well, yes. There's a terraforming campaign going on. They basically explained this in the first Pacific Rim film, where they where the very process of them industrializing to fight the monsters was making the world a more habitable place for the monsters. Granted, that's because the movie was selling climate change carbon emissions. Um, but still. Uh, but like I will say this much, I Sean I think did at one point think that perhaps that was part of it, because if you look, you can see it. If you see this right up here, this banner, he created that. And let me see if I can find a good. He stopped doing things with this channel years ago.
All I'm saying is they're finding UFOs that have Enochian writing in them.
Oh, look at what! Just when you said that, I found this one. I don't even know if I ever watched this one. This is 6 minutes long. Let's find out what he says. Mankind Amnesia, Flying Saucer Review Magazine, November 1958. We made ourselves known in order to accomplish certain ends. I should be reading this. Our principal symbol appears in the... Hold on a second. Am I muted? No, I'm not even muted. All right. Hang on a second. Let me go back and read that for you guys, because that's not fair.
Right? But dude, that goes right along with what I was just talking about.
Right, yeah. We are already here among you. Some of us have always been here with you. Yet, apart from watching and occasionally guiding you whenever the opportunity arose, now, however, our numbers have been increasing in preparation for a further step in the development of your planet, a step of which you are not yet aware. We have been confused with the gods of many world religions, although we are not gods, but your fellow creatures, as you will learn directly before many more years have passed. You will find records of our presence in the mysterious symbols of ancient Egypt, where we made ourselves known in order to accomplish certain ends. This is Thothian horse shit. This is this is Thoth the Atlantean, not Osiris sitting in the office of Tahuti, and I
I
stand
know,
on
but that almost goes into it on a different level. Because what if they're being taught how to create this stuff, and they don't know exactly what it's for?
Well, yeah, there is something going on between dark sorcerers who somehow have made a connection to the abyss, which is also connected to the entire like Gnostic system and things that kind of echo the kind of subtext of this Gnostic fatalism. That
Here's a
is
good example. We don't have the full Enochian language. Like a lot of those pages are missing from most of the texts that we have available. I don't know if there is a text that has the complete Enochian dictionary, but it's such a limited language that we know of right now. There could be a
right,
lot about that we have
right.
absolutely no idea about.
Yeah,
Like there are huge gaps in our magical knowledge as you
yeah.
know, where you're coming from.
I do
People have
find
been shadows for decades.
Yeah. I do find that the findings in some of the work of these various researchers, archaeologists in the day that wrote about them, about like what the history books of these old civilizations in the Middle East, like the Sumerians and the Babylonians and stuff, what they were actually like writing down was going on in history, right? And some of it is mythological because allegedly you've got the Anuna, and then the Anunnaki was propaganda for the Anuna, as some of these sources have said. Um, and so I'm more inclined to believe that. And I am a person who does believe in off-worlders, is part of the thing, right? And I was making these comments in a couple of different shows that I did recently, and we're talking about the hybrid that came in, and if you look at the Box Saga, those Hyperborean bloodlines, I don't know if it's all of them or some of them, but they're compromised. They're fucking compromised by these off-worlders Most of them are coming in via the dark sorcery that has opened up these portals that is being maintained by anything that functions in what you see in Kabbalism, you know? Um, and that magical system is what is keeping this shit going. And
I think
it's what's
I think
keeping the ideology going for
you
those
just summed up the
guys.
vast majority of what we know of as our history,
Yeah.
because there is a large component to how this sort of Proto-Indo-European style of thinking spread over the entire planet and all of the subversion that has taken place since then. Because that was really the birth, as soon as that Proto-Indo-European language split off and started going all across Europe and Asia, that's when you see this massive increase in human intelligence to a degree that we don't even fully understand to this day. And then it seems like, you had this sort of Emperor Strikes Back moment in the, AD 0, right? Where you've got knowledge being looked at as being a negative. Like that's the whole story of the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
It's there's some knowledge that is evil and you can't have it, and we will
Yeah.
put a stop to knowledge.
Yeah.
You get that
And
picture then,
and I find it interesting that this knowledge thing is also got this intricate connection with fertility, right? Because after this knowledge is attained, before Yahweh does anything about it, Adam decides that shame is a thing, and he covers himself up, right? And one of the things I just learned recently that's part of um, uh, ancient Finnish history that is correspondent with the Bach saga is that the swastika, when it was turning clockwise, it meant to increase life, which is where it's first introduced to you. And then another part that I heard later on in a different part of the story was that there's actually a meaning to counterclockwise swastika, which is to increase knowledge. So the Garden of Eden story kind of twists that idea where if you want knowledge, it means that you have to cuck yourself, right? You have to hold back from your carnal, right? Meaning that when you look at the Garden of Eden story, it's just like Yahweh wanted you to be a carnal being and not a knowledgeable being, right? He wouldn't allow you to have the swastika increase knowledge, right? So he wanted Adam and Eve to be breeders and not thinking about anything, not to be expanded in their horizons in any way, shape, or form. And but it's still the question of why shame as the first thing, right? Um, and some people have said it's because Adam and Eve is more of a story akin to the demiurge being kind of born imperfect and coming to realize it, or
well, I
something.
think
There's
that
so many interesting angles there, which have nothing to do with UFO stuff. But you got me going. You got me going off on a tangent, sir.
I don't know if you're right about that because there's a lot of shame that revolves around the UFO question, right? And that has to do with the nature of knowledge itself, because it seems like for the majority of the time that UFOs have been experienced in this country as a mass phenomenon, there was so much shame attached to putting your name on that. And it goes along with that sort of knowledge glass
Yeah.
ceiling.
It was the
We don't
cruel. It
know,
was the cruelty. It was the cruelty of the anal probe cliche.
right?
It was the absolute cruelty of that, right? Which just looking at what they could have been doing with the theory of the psychotronics and these were human fucking beings. You're talking about laughing at monstrous rapes.
Right. Well, not just that, it's just being viewed as crazy by your neighbors. It's like the original cancel culture was all of the
Right.
people going after the people who had, legitimate UFO experiences. And instead of actually having anybody give a shit about them, they were laughed at and treated like shit. I mean, that sort of goes to the idea of, hide your shame.
Right,
Like
right.
there is this sort of the general public have to have this idea that this is acceptable, and you can't be talking about this over here because this is unacceptable. And this is why they come up with things like conspiracy theorists. They want people to be in that pen of controlled thinking. And that pen of controlled thinking you could find all over the Bible,
Oh yeah.
as opposed to the pagan religions, which are like, yeah, we should be asking questions about this. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Um, let me see. This next one says, our principal symbol appears in the religious art of your present civilization and occupies a position of importance upon the great seal of your country, the United States of America. It has been preserved in certain secret societies, founded originally to keep alive the knowledge of our existence and our intentions towards mankind. This kind of prophetic shit is exactly what Jordan Maxwell warned people about. Yeah, Jordan Maxwell is a little bit misunderstood because of how useful his disclosure was to many different people, going up through the 80s and the 90s before we knew better. So he comes off as somebody who was like pro, like some sort of Jewish kind of mysticism, like revival or something like that, when he was really just trying to say like I'm caught in this mystery, you're caught in this mystery, we got to look at this stuff, ask questions, have a better conversation, and made sure that we remembered, look at these fucking symbols that they keep throwing in your face all over the place, look at these words they keep using on you all over the place, right? And realizing how much, uh, all of that was designed to put you in a certain kind of mental pen that doesn't make any sense to be in, and you only stay in if you have a diminished value of self, right? And so here is like cultish shit making, that makes American narcissists, people that project American narcissism, feel like, oh, good, God's finally got our country, like, doing the right thing that's going to wow mankind into being a global peace, right? It's this kind of shit, right?
well, if you think about how they've used the symbols since, let's say for 2,000 years at least, the way that they've taken advantage of the symbolism is all in that cube, right? I mean, we've
Yeah,
seen that black cube happen over and over again all over the world. It almost seems like it is a type of hypercube. We're sort of stuck in this one mentality, in this one stream of thought. And I don't think that the ancient world was like that. There were so many more variations between people than we have today. Most everybody thinks the same, and it's kind of frightening if you think about it. I mean, where's the culture? There was a lot of
yeah,
connection back then, and they knew about other people, but they
right,
all had distinctions that they were really proud of.
right.
And it seems like we've got this global homogeneity leading us towards a certain point. And I'd like to, bring it back to the Old Testament for a little bit. They worshipped a cloud in a box. How much more of a computer symbolism can you have? It's almost like an algorithm that's sort of chopping off different parts of what made us human back then,
Right,
you know?
right.
And so
Um,
we're stuck in a box.
yeah. Hey, do me
Pure
do me a do me
colonization.
do me a quick favor. Keep
Yeah.
chit chatting with the audience. I have to run upstairs before I explode.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a kind of bizarre linkage between the colonization of the planet via maybe terraforming and all these symbols that this guy is showing, and references to it in the Old Testament and these Anunnaki scriptures, or whatever it's called. It's called the Tablet of Thoth, the Atlantean. If you've ever read that book, I'm sorry, dude. I really am. That was a tough read. Like getting through that, it just kind of made me sick. Like every other thing is just all about this character, but in some ways, I think it is channeled material, and so you can't really trust all of it, especially about their names and faces and dates and all the rest of that shit. It was terrible. But there could be other things that are thrown in channeled material that you may not be expecting to be as accurate as it is. And you'll find that a lot in the works of Sleeping Prophet. Let me see, what's his name? Edgar Casey, right? So the names and dates seem way off, but the truth of what he's saying is too profound not to take a look at, right? And this sleeping prophet angle is kind of an interesting way that maybe they've had contact with us is through mediumship and through people who can channel these spirits. Because let's face it, if you're basically living as a multidimensional organism in a cloud, there's not a lot you can do to connect with the people beneath you other than try and use some sort of telepathic linkage. Because you go down there, you die, basically. You know?
All
Oh,
right, I'm
look at
back.
that.
I'm back, and I brought my
Oh,
handler.
nice. Nice. How old is he?
Oh, Locke's got to be about 5 years old.
Hmm. Good age for a lizard. Oh, he looks sweet.
Yeah, he is.
I know
Okay.
some iguanas just go feral after a while, and you just can't really put up with them. But completely different kind of iguana.
His worst habit is that he'll change the spot he cares to poop in, and it'll be very annoying because then I have to move things around to accommodate
Right.
that. But yeah. I thought I caught a teeny tiny bit of that, but I mostly couldn't hear it.
Oh, well, I was just saying that it is a strange sort of similarity between the craft, their shapes, and the type of symbols that they use as their kind of, you know, here's us kind of tagging. You know, it's kind of like
Right,
gangs
right.
being a tag.
Well,
And
these
if you watch
designs
TV,
they do fall in line uh with progressions of known designs from Lockheed Skunk Works, and it falls in line with known progressions of certain designs that were
I'm talking about the
taken from
Freemason
the
G.
Nazis.
I'm talking about like the Freemason G, the T square and the compass. You've got all these symbols that are sort of like you can overlay those with any of these aircraft or these UFOs all
Yes,
throughout history.
you
Their
can.
main symbols are
In
like right there.
in the classic I Pet Goat 2 video, when they show the flyover bombing of the mosque, the B-1 bombers are actually it's actually the square from the square and compass uh, flying over them, dropping the bombs. So it's a Masonic war on and it was specifically a mosque for the shoot, was it the not the Suf was it the Sufi? I think it was the Sufis with the dervishes, right? Because
Yeah,
they bombed the
the
mosque,
Sufis.
and then the dervish boy is spinning up out of the mosque.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense because if you think about it, that's been the mystical form of Islam for thousands of years, you know? And they've survived, even though there have been sects of Islam that have tried to take them out very, very seriously, like trying to exterminate the Sufi. Well, they've survived, and there's something to be said about that because, like they're still on the outs with a lot of the different other sects of, like Wahhabism, for example. So Wahhabists would rather see all the dervishes slaughtered, but they can't get to them. So they mess with Israel instead. It seems like the most intolerant portions of that religion have received the most amount of funding, you know? And it's hard to ignore
Right,
that.
right. It's just like in the Ukraine. Our guys were really fond of the Azov Battalion, and anybody the Azov Battalion was fine with. Kind of funny how we had to work with the most scrupulous of people to, the enemy of my enemy is my friend in
How could
in
we
the
forget
Baltics.
ISIS? That's another looming threat. They've started up ISIS again back in Syria, and now they're taking over towns again. And so now Russia has a two-front war on their hands in Syria and in the Ukraine.
Mm.
So I guess thanks for that one. Now we've got a real world war on our hands.
Right, right. And it's just interesting that like I thought that things perhaps were changing because it seemed like when Trump was in office that it was causing attitudes in the Middle East to change dramatically, and the reasoning for going and getting into ISIS had changed. Like leaders were making all sorts of new decisions, and because people were reacting to what's being revealed to them. So, where are these populations that are filling up ISIS? Right? Is this just a psyop to say that, well, the agencies have their top men doing ISIS stuff, and we're going to make believe that we've got armies of ISIS? What
I
if
think
it's
I can
just some
pretty
top men
definitively
putting on a show?
I can pretty definitively explain exactly how that happened because you didn't get the kickoff in Ukraine until after we pulled out of Afghanistan. Ukraine was a massive money laundering operation. We already know that. But where is that money going to? Is it coming back to America or is it going down to fill up all the tanks on our enemies down in the Middle East to keep that war going? Why not both? They're cheap. You pay them a couple $1 million and they're ready to go out there and blow themselves up for you
Yep,
because
yep.
that money goes a long fucking way. I'll tell you.
Gotcha. So
And we're talking about billions.
here's a good question because if I'm behind on anything, it's understanding the metaphysical, spiritual, whatever psychology of Muslims intimately enough to know how they're going to react the way I know many Christians would react. So let's just say they're going to pull off what Cliff High says they're going to pull off on the 3rd. What's the Muslim world's plan of reaction?
Well, I think it's going to be pushing into a more, I guess you could call it Gog Magog stance, right? You're going to have them blow the shit out of each other for about 5 years. And then at some point, they're both going to realize what the real problem was, which was being controlled by Jewish people on both of them. And then they're going to both turn against the nation of Israel, because this is what's written about in their stupid holy book.
Right.
And so this Gog Magog war is a self-fulfilling prophecy now, using these three actors, which would be Ishmael, Islam, you've got Esau, which is Rome, and you've got Jacob, which is Israel. And so in this Ezekiel example, like they take the ideas of the Gog Magog war in Ezekiel and they say we're going to be applying that prophecy to what we're doing today. So now you've got that conflict between Muslims and Americans or Christians or Edom that's going to bring them to fighting to a standstill, and then they determine who the real enemy is, which is Israel, right? This is what was talked about in that book by the Master Mason. What's his name? You know what I'm talking about? He was back in the 1800s with he was a general in the Southern
Yeah,
Army.
yeah, yeah. Shoot, I did a whole thing about him. He was the Mason Confederate occultist. Shoot.
He looked
They
identical to the
they
leader
they
of
they destroyed his statue in 2020. The
yeah.
Antifa destroyed his statue down south in 2020. It was a big deal. Um, yeah, that guy. I know about the letter. I covered his letter on my old channel. Yeah.
That's the Third World War he's talking about. That's the Gog Magog War, which is supposedly going to eliminate religion. And
Right. Yeah.
in essence, that's what you've got going on is they really want to get rid of religion as a concept for humans. They want to take it out of the lexicon.
Right. Well, you know what? Yeah, but here's the thing. Um, Religion is not really what they're taking out. They're taking something out of religion and lying to you that they're keeping religion just
Right.
because of the baggage associated with the word religion, but they still want to do the religio. You see, the reptilians are very antsy because I'm telling the truth. He's just like, no, let me get up there and control your mind. Nice work. I was just trying to perch him on my head, and he had to make a big conniption fit about it. Anyway, where was I before I was assaulted by reptilians?
you were talking about the reptilians and how they would like to keep themselves in those positions. And I think
Right.
the way I think of it is, let's say that what happened to the Israelites really happened to the Israelites. And they had this box where God would come down as a cloud and put himself into the box as a cloud. We were just talking about that. He puts himself into the box, and then his responses to mankind appear on a light up chessboard on the chests of the high priests. Right? So these little rocks that he has on his chest would light up, which would give the answer to the questions that the priests would ask of this cloud in a box. If this is sounding like some sort of weird sci-fi thing, it should.
Right,
This
right,
is
right.
what
Yeah, okay,
Exodus is.
you're talking about that method of divination that the Israel kings used. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
That's
forgot the
correct.
name of it. But I read a couple of interesting things about it, and I wanted to talk about that just so when somebody threw some more shit in my face about things that I did that was magical, I said, "Oh, read your Bible again, you Jew worshipping fuck."
So they would have this tent that they would fumigate with marijuana, like absolutely just hotbox the shit out of this thing. And this is where they had to tie a uh, a bell rope around these priests that were going into this totally smogged out temple because they had to know if you would fall over or not and die in the presence of God,
Mm.
right? And so he's getting totally baked, on all this marijuana fumes before going into this chamber. Well, they claim to have this Holy of Holies in Ethiopia right now. The funny thing about it is the people who guard where this, Holy of Holies temple is, this, box that holds God, is the people who work there end up losing their eyesight very quickly afterwards.
Right, right.
And they think that it's related to some kind of radiation.
Yeah.
What if all of this is true? And what if this thing is a multi-dimensional fucking life form that has given us these contradictory narratives so that we can be led into the place where we can be colonized more effectively by whatever these cloud sky gods are?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And right now, what I know for certain is that the advice of the Pentagon is to that these guys are up to no good, right? They want us to shoot down these kinds of things at this point, right? Which makes sense because they're invading our airspace. This is supposed to be
Literally.
this is supposed to be a function of the only thing you expect the military to do. But this, of course, is not the conversation that is honest. And that's the problem. Because, like Joe Rogan, it's not saying the right things. It's what it's not saying is what is pissing me off.
Right. Absolutely. I get it. I think the horizon is just so much more expansive than we give it credit for. And what we view today as sort of like far-flung theories or whatever could change on a dime tomorrow. And it could be something that we least expect because what if there are thoughts that we're not allowed to think? Have you ever thought about that? Maybe there are words we're not allowed to say, and how the hell would we ever know what they are?
I know, and that's exactly what people have been dealing with censorship, right? Because it came to a point where it wasn't good enough to just hit a trigger word. Now they needed the algorithm to draw the context of your conversation to realize what you're talking about, and then ban you superficially without getting specific because now it's acting like, oh, you know why we fucking took you down, and that's the way they
Right.
fucking act,
Right.
right? You know you were wrong, and that you have no right to ask for it back. You know that this is their attitude with you.
Right. And what if it goes down to a deeper spiritual level too? You know, I mean, what if, okay, look at all the UFOs. They've all got a pause button, right? So if you're looking at them, all of a sudden time stops.
Mm.
Well, if they can do that to one or two people that are looking at their craft, why can't they do it to a whole hemisphere? What if there are programs that they can input into us by flooding a side of the planet with the type of energy they use to pause people
Hmm.
so that they can implant new programming?
Look, all they have to do is a hypnotic suggestion, and if they can help that by poisoning the air, thus this conversation we were just having about that video 5 minutes ago, right? And these have been big parts of what's mattered, right? Because that's one of them. There's another video that shows you how they can hit you with a strike of lightning by arcing the electricity from each one of those little drones from the cloud to one of the smallest drones, so that way it can just park right over your electro-attractive field and hit you properly and vaporize you as an act of God, just like that.
I've always wondered about that, using lightning as a
Yeah,
weapon.
yeah, yeah. You want to see it? Like, I'll pull it. Let me pull it up. I think it was literally the next video shows you how he figured it out because he tracks. Um, where is it? Did I close it? No, I didn't. Wait.
This is
Oh,
always
there
the
it is.
power that they've lusted after for centuries. You know, it's always been the ability to control lightning. You read about the ancient texts, what they talk about is the lightning god being above everybody else. You look at Thor and Zeus, the idea of being able to control lightning and strike somebody with it has been a lustful point of power for the people in the establishment for as long as time has existed, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Let me see here. I gotta go back to. Wait a minute. Which playlist is it? See how much work this guy's done. Like, these are short ones. These are like clips from like hours that he's put up on others. What? No, that's not it. Shoot.
Yeah, I think he is documenting something, and I think that something might be too much for him or us to even come close to grasping what we're looking at.
Right. He kind of did a good job. Like for and what's really great is just like we've had that conversation too about whether they're possibly an organic thing. Oh wait, I'm looking at videos. I should be looking at playlists. There we go. That's smart. That's the one. Thank you. All right. 4, 5, lightning. Here we go.
If you're going to own the weather by 2025, you'll have to own the lightning too, or just make some. Since my initial clues came from the lack of typical summer afternoon lightning and storms, I paid close attention to the few lightning storms I've seen in the last year, and I recorded them.
I'm
Starting
gonna
with
get
the
more coffee.
Sony
I'll be
night
right back.
vision camcorder, I focused the lens on this electrical burst that appeared out of nowhere one late evening. I judged the cell to be somewhere around 10 to 15 miles away at most. Though the lightning did not produce a sound, I brushed it off as heat lightning, until I found out that heat lightning does not exist. Only muffled sound does. I remember picking out and isolating video-captured lightning bolts from a dying storm weeks before, only to notice that on the video editor, the cut areas were evenly spaced out, like the bolts were timed. I then went back to the silent storm and isolated the flashes in that video. A few things showed up.
Hang on, he's cutting over.
1. The bolts seemed to travel from left to right, starting with a spark at the same place each time, that also illuminated a delta shape above it.
So he finds a sequence and follows a sequence that he discovers this particular time. Uh-oh, where's he going?
Yeah, that guy is a dangerous autist.
Yeah, he is. Ugh. Locke is now hanging out somewhere back by the wires, so I hope this signal doesn't get screwed up. So, let's
Well,
see.
lizards don't normally like wires. Normally that's like a cat thing or a rodent thing.
No, well, he's just crawling around where it's tight and interesting, looking for a spot to disappear. All right, so...
2. The bolts seemed to show up at the same spots in the clouds each time, moving horizontally until the energy was dispersed, sometimes with ground contact.
So he goes over
That emanate electricity tended to show a rhythmic pattern as well, which corresponded with each other spot. 4. After knowing what the aircraft looked like, their shadows began to reveal themselves in the video. By tracing out the shadows on video frames and comparing, I realized that yes, the lightning was fake, and that yes, the craft were responsible. Some bolts were even sparking below the cloud layer and into a cross pattern.
Almost done. He's gonna cause trouble. I know it. Yeah, this is so back in the day. So anyway, he keeps going over this point, and then where we're at over here.
Notice where the bolt sparks, and notice the cloud shapes.
And then we get to
Here's
this.
how it's done.
Here's the thing.
The initial electrical charge comes from one of the large ships, probably generated by the fan/coil engine. The charge travels along its spine and electrified pathways onto the next craft behind it. This craft relays the charge to the next one, and so forth, until the charge is funneled to the smaller ships hanging lower to the ground. Boom. Pick a target. It was an act of God, or men playing God.
So I mean, if it's an organism, that's a pretty neat trick for the organism. So there's how you weaponize what these things are doing.
Did you catch what he said originally? He said that these things weren't hitting the ground and they weren't making noise.
Yeah.
So I think what you could be looking at is, like he's talking about harvested discharges, but I think that's what could be powering this sort of organism, is these controlled discharges between these different layers of energy. They could just be up there harvesting energy all day long.
No, yeah, that's what they're doing, but here, but it's like, it's just like, there's a military base, like, right there, right? And like, oh, why is there a military base right there? I'm under attack. It's just like, no, they're just running supplies back and forth all day. That's all that they do. But, dude, they got a tank and they could just plow my house, right? That's all he's saying. It's just like, here's some shit that can fucking kill you in the sky that somebody is not telling us about.
Right. No, I'm saying, like, what if these are synapses of a massive consciousness? Like this is like the thoughts firing between,
Right.
cells.
Well,
There's
what they're hoping to pull off is, like, everybody's primal imagination of this thing is going to basically go for what is known as the Nuremberg relief, right? Which is the famous thing where the architecture of the cosmos is laid bare in what looks like Star Wars happening directly over your fucking head. Um, and
Right.
That's the kind of thing, because people that are having a hard time with this life, they need some sort of ontological shock that they can't initiate on their own. They can't initiate seeing the world differently themselves because it's the forbidden fruit and they shall not sin against God. And so they're waiting for whatever force to victimize them, to give them a permission slip to expand their consciousness, right? And a lot of people are going to fail that test abysmally.
But that's kind of like what I was talking about. There's been a kind of a mental glass ceiling on how we operate. Like I was bringing up what's his name, Amon, the guy who does the Greek earlier,
Yeah,
and
Dr. Amon Hillman.
right, he talks about Greek in such a way that you know it had a million unique words. Like this was one of the most complex languages, not just back then, but in all of history. Like they had the mental power that we couldn't even imagine today. Like, do you want to play Are You
Yeah,
Smarter Than a Fifth Century Athenian? And you have to wonder, if that's the case, how did we get so much dumber
sure,
from
yeah.
that point? You know? And if our language is dumbed down, then why wouldn't we as well become dumbed down? And you can see that degradation start to really pick up really strong after they started destroying all of the ancient works of art and literature and
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah. A question I was positing uh, the other day on another channel that was covering, I forget what the hell they were covering, but I posited the question of like, what's the history of when we changed our script in America? We don't write the way our Constitution in 1779 or whatever, 89, whatever, was freaking published, right? The whole SF thing and all the other little things about how we write. When and why and how did we change our writing system? Is this something that we lost straight up because of the Civil War? What did we lose it? Did we start losing it slowly over time after the Revolution because it was connected to British education? I don't know.
Well, let's depersonalize it. What if language is a type of egregore? What if it's a type of spirit? Like that spirit came upon mankind and changed the way we thought about everything for all time. But let's say that maybe that the idea of language is itself conscious, is itself an entity. Maybe it's a super entity above several other entities. But there's something about it that is transformational on a conscious level that I don't think it should be ruled out that maybe language itself is conscious. Maybe it exists outside of us. Maybe we're the servants of language instead of language being our servant.
Well, yeah. Well, I think that there's always a consciousness behind um behind a word, uh uh like because like it's very interesting on an ultra breakdown level, especially when it becomes your own language, right? Like the root language in the Bach saga, which English is the inherent child of that root language, and each letter has its own very particular meaning and is expressed going around the wheel of the alphabet in a way that even tells a story. And then
Don't
so
forget the
so any
rodents.
words that you're spelling or speaking with those letters becomes a combination of the story of those three letters or four letters or whatever amount of letters is in the word, and whichever amount of syllables, because each syllable is its own little entity of thought, so on and so forth, right? This is why I like to bring up bibliodolatry, which is the worship of a book, which is what of these Second Temple rabbinical Jewish Christians, the ones that fall into the Zionist fervor and serve them, uh, you know, these guys are in this bibliolatry. And why it's an idolatry is very plain to see that they're worshiping as per the words in their book as their guide. And the word is what? It's the logos. And so you're worshiping the logos in form, right? You've made a form out of the logos, which is one of the aspects of your deity. So now you're committing idolatry because you're completely hung up on the word itself, just like our ancestors that were totemists got hung up on their little idols.
Right. But on some level, it's more genuine to be able to think about the world in this way than not even being able to consider it because of the fact that you've grown up in the, bibliolatry, right? So when you get rid of polytheism and the ability to identify what a god is, right? I mean, God has a definition. Does anybody actually use it? They just sort of refer to this thing that everybody should know in their own heads as
Yeah,
God without providing any definitions,
right. Yeah, in the root language, God is goat. That's what's
right?
hysterical. That's what's absolutely fucking hysterical about it. So you're using this word, which in Old Norse is good or good, right? So good, right? Good and God and all that stuff. But good is also goat too, right? And this is where the Goths come from in Gotland, right? And then
Right?
all of this is coherent with the Bach saga because uh,
Age of
because
Aries,
because the first god was a nanny goat and a monkey, right? And
Age
so
of Aries.
They made Frey and Freya, brother and sister, and then they made the first man and first woman.
Right, but we're talking about stuff that dates back to the early Bronze Age, which is the age of Aries, and having that sort of astrological component to all of these different religions that originate really, really far back, and seeing how they relate to these different astrological symbols that are over 40,000 years old, really shows you how deep the concept of societal control goes and how much connection it is to these
Yeah,
astrological bodies.
yeah, exactly. And so the people that are living in a certain vernacular, in a certain curated meaning of words. They're living in a very narrow, contextualized world that is going to be the process that leads them to be completely psychologically, emotionally manipulated by whatever events that they may try and pull off on this crazy day.
We had to be trained to be what we are. And they've been experimenting for thousands of years, I believe. You know? I think the multidimensional aspect of this shouldn't be ignored. There's a separate concept of time that applies to these ideas and these words that really doesn't apply to us because, in our finite way of looking at things, at least for the most part, we don't think about where these words come from or what their origin stories are. We have a lot more lately, right? But on an everyday person's life for the last 3,000 years, it was always about getting done with the plowing or doing something where you don't have to think too much. You don't have to connect too much. And now we've got all this information, but no way to connect it back to nature. There's that separation between nature and knowledge now that's kind of it's almost all pervasive, right? We had to be taken away from nature to get rid of that ancient knowledge. And then once we did, we have no way to connect back to our home, our roots, because I think the one thing we can all agree on is that we are natives of this planet Earth. And they're not going to be able to take that away from us. Like, this is it. This is our home. So we better start treating it as such and, basically not giving in to the temptation of falling for the outside narratives. We're always in a constant push of having that happen, right? I mean,
Yeah,
outside narratives is all we've ever known.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there's another one that we're not listening to, and that's our connection to the planet.
Yeah, precisely, right? part of the wholeness is you having a relationship with heaven and earth, and making sure that you're having a firm relationship with both, right? Because if you're not connected to the earth, any heights you soar to are going to give you vertigo, whether you think you like vertigo or not. It's not good to be in the experience, even if you're trying to like feeling the feeling of vertigo, right? Get grounded. I want to say hi to the chat room for a second. I want to start wrapping it up too. So get into your last minute thoughts as we're approaching the end of the second hour, and we'll. But I want to say hi to everybody because we did have a good turnout in the chat room. So polymathing PK, no regrets ever. Slick Dissident was in tonight, my boy. The Library was in. Who else was here? I saw a few people. Saniko. Saniko's a longtime Canadian listener of mine. He's a good dude. I saw some other people a little bit later. Ooh, Occult Rejects popped in. Nick was here.
Nice.
Let's see those. I think I mentioned PK already, and I gave Nick his wrench today because he finally showed up. And Homunculus Highway Bison Punster. I might know who that is. I don't know why they retracted all of their messages, but I think it's a friend, so I'm going to assume hello. And I think
It's hard to tell with a name like that.
Yeah, there's one dude I know who likely has named himself Homunculus, who's a really solid alchemist. So I'll have to hit him up on Facebook and ask him if that was him, unless he wants to disclose that before I sign off. So yeah. So everybody's been here, and the last message was actually from Nick. So Nick's still here. He's been listening the whole time. Thank you so much, brother. It's I've been listening to, man. It is intense listening to you talk about death. I fucking love it. All right. So Headless, give us some parting thoughts here about being prepared for yourself and prepared for people around you when they pull this off and trigger whatever Hegelian nightmare they would like to.
Well, I would say get into aura reading. Go out into nature, look at the space around the trees. You can find an evergreen out there, and you'll start to notice the same kind of stuff he was talking about up in these clouds existing on the outside and around these trees. And once you start doing that, try and use that ability as you're driving in the car. It's like a visual version of dowsing, right? And if you're gonna want to check out places of power, you're going to be able to do so by reading the land, reading the energy off of the land, having the ability to reconnect with places of power, using your mental abilities and your ability to meditate is going to take your consciousness from the level it is now to a whole different level. So you've got to find the places of power and do meditations there, because it's something that nobody talks about. There is magnetic resonances within this planet that can give people the ability to see beyond the veil. And we're in a very, very potent time right now for seeing beyond the veil, since it is getting close to the middle of winter. Those last days of the year are some of the most powerful times to get out into nature and reconnect at these places of power. So
Indeed.
that would my suggestion to everybody is get out into nature and start to experience it for yourself. That's how you're going to find the answers to these things.
Yeah. Find if you're good at figuring out where ley lines are, go to a ley line point that you can, or find a good vibe on a forest trail somewhere and maybe get a little bit lost. Not too close to sunset, people. Not too close to sunset.
Well,
I missed.
I don't know.
By the way, one second. I missed Zephyr Avoxel. She's a very good friend of mine, so I had to say hi to her. Hi, Zephyr. Okay, so now I didn't miss anybody.
Nice. Well, I would say also go out there during sunset. Just don't get lost at sunset. But here's the thing. So the ancient Greeks had these two gods of dawn and dusk. The goddess of dawn was Eos, and Eos was the mother of the four winds, right? And the four winds represent the anemoi, and the anemoi are what gives breath of life to everybody, right? This idea of the four winds. Now she had the four winds with the god of dusk, Astrius. Now, I don't know why Astrius doesn't get more attention in modern times, but he is the god of astrology, right? So it's astrology and the dawn that gives us our breath of life. And once you start getting out there and starting to sing to the deities of dawn and dusk, you're going to find that those liminal spaces open your brain up to massive new downloads of information. So
Yeah,
Eos and Astrius,
yeah.
check them out.
When I hear that, because Bach Saga on the brain, As, which is part of astrology anyway. As is the As people, and then tree, I think is what's going on there. Astrology tree, right? The tree, Astri, and then the os. Uh, I'm not trying to repeat myself with the as, but I don't remember what the os is. But that's gonna have its own inherent uh, meaning as well. That makes so that makes a certain amount of sense, especially if it's a tree, because that's a pole that's talking about the pole star and the stars revolving around the pole, and the pole is a euphemism, as everything is in root language, which asks us to be adults. Um, Excellent work. There's so much to go. There's so many angles. It's time for graduation apparently on the third. So, I spent 12 years of my life, um, or what was doing it since 12 years ago, trying to warn people about being fooled by exactly this fucking thing. But I thought people were not going to get fooled by the pandemic, but I was horribly wrong, to the point where the universe turned against me. That was fun. Um, so we'll see if the universe turns against me again. Either way, I'm prepared to punch somebody in the face a lot more than I was 4 years ago. Yay me. All right. Thank you, Headless. Pitch your place.
Yeah, you can check out my latest interview with Nick from the Occult Rejects. We put it on yesterday. Check out the live section of the podcast. We really got into it, and I think we didn't even talk too much about the swastika, but we were thinking that if, as you're crossing the boundary into the abyss, you see the swastika swirling in front of this giant eclipse.
Right.
Now, if you use the swastika as a symbol, you've now connected to everybody that has ever reincarnated and seen the swastika,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's something very powerful about that symbol, especially going back to the polar
Yeah.
symbolism, how to escape the matrix. That whole thing is wrapped up in your ability to cross the abyss. So I think that's something people should think about looking into. Crossing the abyss is a way of reconnecting with reality.
Most images of a seraphim that I've seen have had 8 wings, and when I took my heroic dose of albino penis envy mushrooms, um, I saw what was akin to a seraphim. While I was kind of going through a transmutation of the soul, writhing on my bed from the tummy ache that the raw mushrooms gave me. So it was a bad trip that I refused to let defeat me, and it was fantastic on the other side of it. But yeah, but like it was kind of like seeing that, but more in a Lovecraftian, but also kind of like a very heavenly, like fluorescent light type fairy wings, as well as these tentacles kind of thing. And but um but yeah, it's like, I'm not going to say I saw what Nick saw, but I am saying that what I saw is a little bit like what Nick saw, and I think I mentioned that to him because that was my comparative when I had a chit chat with him when he was just early on starting to talk about this. This is just a couple weeks ago, so it was a really good time because I'd waited maybe a year or something. We'd known each other for a hot minute, and I was trying to have him back on and to promote his shit, and the man's living the life for real, and so that's the only reason why I couldn't get a hold of him. He was out there dying so he could have something to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah,
All
man.
right.
So this has been a great episode. Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff and theorizing about it. And I think if people just, open their eyes a little bit, they might be able to get a lot more than they expected to see.
Very cool. All right, I'm going to hit the closing crawl. And this is Headless Giant and Zeralath Immortal out.
Right. It just seems to me that they're intentionally tanking it, you know? Like you can't get on a like they